people go from ruling everything on the planet to being ruled everywhere on the planet. And as I get started here, I'm going to talk about all around the world, wherever you find us at. Like, go to India. India, they have a group of people there known as the untouchables. They are the Aksumi, or the dark-skinned, woolly-haired people of Europe, and they often call them the untouchables. And these untouchables of India came from Africa a couple thousand years ago and settled the area. And so they end up being placed in a different role. So now, if you use your biblical reference, the biblical reference says that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. It's talking about the stone that the builder rejected, being the chief cornerstone. So we got to go back to a time when Earth was pretty much a peachy place to be. And from that, it ended up to where war and pain and suffering seemed to be the rule of the day. So we went from being a peaceful planet where we came and developed a high spiritual culture, fashion, design, dance, art, and all of the different sciences. Now, coming from what looks like a dark age, stone age, so to speak, like a prehistoric period where, do a couple more invites and then I'm gonna go ahead and have you off into this subject matter. A couple more here. Okay. All right, so I'm done doing invites. So, so black people here in America are under the false illusion that they were slaves, first and foremost. So remember that history is written by the ones they call the victor. So the winner write the story. So what story would the winner give you that would prevent you from resisting his tyranny and his reign? He'll give you a view of history that would make you least resistant. He'll give you a view of history that make you least amount of resistant to him ruling over you. And there's no secret in America that the caste system has been turned into a skin-based caste system. This is where the doctrine of white supremacy was adopted from by Alexander. Now, you have to be able to take yourself out of history as a victim of it in order to see the timeline. So we go back to the beginning. The beginning is this. When they talk about Homo erectus, Homo sapien, Australopithecines, Australorobustus, Gigantopithecus, all of these different ancient skeletal remains they finding were black people. All the way back to Lucy to about a little less than 10,000 years ago. Europe was sparsely inhabited by pockets of people before this, okay? So what happened that brings us to this point is the scientists of an earlier period decided that they wanted to capture these forces that governed over as nature spirits. And in order to capture them, they built what we see in CERN as a hadron collider, a particle accelerator. And this is the fall, but the fall was not from a transgression. The fall was from science going wrong. or how it intended. Now, so in order to be able to see what's going on, we got to go to the Egyptian sciences. All right. Egypt is the origin or the record keeper. The Egyptian sciences tell us that everything that exists came forth from something called the noon. N-U-N, the noon. It's pronounced just like noontime. And it's a reason for that. What we call in modern science, dark matter. And dark matter is the most potent form of energy discovered to date, but it's the most hard and difficult to harvest. So this is what they was originally building the particle accelerator for back then, which is the exact same justification for this particle accelerator. Now, at this time, the people were not like they are now. The physiology was different. They had a more, like a longer body, longer torso, more protruding abdomen because they breathe heavily from their lower abdomen. When they tell you to breathe from here, breathe, and in singing, they teach you how to breathe from the diaphragm, which gives you that bold look in your belly. So these people had what we tend to call a beer belly in appearance, but they were slim in description. They were very skinny people with longer limbs. So you see some humans that have arms that's way long for their body. Those are throwback from this period. Anyway, so the goal was to take these, what they call whole light beings. The whole light beings were what you call nature spirits, and they maintained the balance throughout nature because they were all like expressions of Ma'at. Ma'at being perfect balance. Ma'at being also represented by an Egyptian deity by the name of Ma'at, who actually earned the title of Ma'at as a just judge. So when you see them use Ma'at and they represented by that particular female called Ma'at, she earned that title because she was the most just judge of the period. So she earned the title of Ma'at, and she earned the title of being just in her judgment. And so we know her in modern times, they call her Karma. They call her Karma and Akasha because she keep the records for judgment. So it works like this. The wisdom precedes the justice. The wisdom collects the information that the judgment will be rendered by. So you got to be wise enough to know the right and wrong aspect. So then you see your biblical story of Adam and Eve not knowing right and wrong. That's what they're talking about because, hey, how y'all doing? Let me say hi to a couple people. Hey, Malika, Abadia, how y'all doing? So when you look at Ma'at in Egypt, you see other things that's tied to it. A set of scales, the woman with the wings, these different things. So you see all of this stuff in the stela or the hieroglyph. So you go to a historical record in the hieroglyph and you see that there's a whole lot of judgments taking place. And what we don't realize is that in Egypt, you have a set of earth guardians. These guardians are not originally from Egypt. They came from deeper in the interior of Africa. So we end up encountering something they call a Dogon. Now, in the Dogon story, they said that the black people came from Sirius A, Sirius B, and Sirius C. And they have some other things in their story that I'm not going to touch on because they haven't exposed it to the Western world for a reason. But they tell that the gods Amo and Namo when they begin to become conscious on Earth, came and told them to restrain from the use of projectile weaponry. This is before the invention of gunpowder. We're talking thousands of years ago. They're telling them to avoid the projectile weapons. Now, why would they tell them that? Because projectile weapons aren't invented yet, or were they? So what they was warning them about is the projectile weaponry that we call firearms. Leads down a bigger bomb path that will end up in a nuclear bomb as the result. That's why they warned them against it. Another reason they warned them against it is because during the transitional phase from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age, the firearm would be the symbol for the strength and the power, which is told to us by indicating the chosen one as a spear. Say the flaming spear or the burning spear. Now, on the continent of Africa, the designated one as the Son of Man is represented by a spear where the tip of the spear is on fire. So you see that the publication here was out of Chicago for the New Panther Vanguard was called the Flaming Spear. You go to Jamaica, Haiti, and islands, and you find a very strong reference to the Flaming Spear, which points back to the connection to Africa. Whereas over here, it's not a flaming spear, it's a golden arrow in what they call the Americas, which is the Amur Inca. And this is why everybody's saying that they Moors. Amur Inca is this side of the water, and Afar Inca is the other side of the water that they call Africa. And all of these things becomes relevant as we unravel how did black people get at the bottom. So we go and we look at the history timeline. First, we had to understand how did the gods get trapped in the physical body, which goes to the collider catastrophe of a far ancient bygone period. The collider was built where the Mediterranean is. And when they blew it up to implode the fourth dimension and cause all of the residual energies to slow down in the fourth dimension as it enters the third, which would cause a solidifying effect, almost like steam or vapor freezing. And these whole light beings became disoriented, at which time they was attached to something called the silver cord. And you hear astral travelers always talking about the silver cord. You need the silver cord, and this is why you see your solar and lunar references in all secret societies. When your souls got trapped in the physical, three-dimensional fixed position reality, you needed the silver cord in order to loop you. In order to loop you back into what they call the reincarnation cycle. So now you're here on Earth, but you still have abilities. You can still do things using the silver cord or what they call the silver key, which is the night magic. And the night magic allows you to traverse using your silver cord as the lifeline to a reflection of the creator, but it's not the creator. And so now you start to see why the solar symbolism becomes necessary, because the lunar reflects the solar, right? So if you have to get to a point where you outgrow the silver cord or the reflective intelligence, the false intelligence of the silver cord, you become what they call enlightened, which means that just like that lotus flower, the inner sun, the pyramid, the pyramid, pyro means fire, mid means in the middle. So when the pyramid opens up, when the fire in the middle opens up, this is what they call the Ra effect. the Ra effect. This is when you become fully realized to who and what you are. So now the solar ray is exactly this. The creator is everything. All right. And it's in everything. However, the creator, when it comes into this reality, it wants to give you the free will to choose to do the right thing. So the creator says, I'm going to close myself into this little bitty ball in the middle of you. And they put it right here in your heart chakra. And for those who are spiritually gifted, it looks like a little gold chip in the heart. It looks like a little gold chip. And you have to be diligent in your responsibilities according to the life path you choose. So if I choose to be a doctor, I have to be diligent in my life path as a doctor with the highest intention to heal the sick in order to allow that little pebble of gold to grow. And this is what they call illumination. That little pebble of gold or that golden light is sealed in your heart chakra with something they call the black goo by energy workers, which will bring us to what they call the redemption of the righteous when we understand what that goo is and how it got there. So this little sliver of light is expressed in your New Testament of the Bible as the light, that little pebble, shine in the dark because it's wrapped in that black goo. But the dark comprehend it not, right? So it also tells you in your New Testament, it's the words in red that I'm speaking of, that this light, when you let your light shine, when both of your eyes become one, your whole body is filled with light. Your whole body and your eyes can never become one until this piece of gold breaks your silver cord. This piece of gold is rooted in an emotional framework of what you call love. But there's no such thing in truth as an emotion called love. Love is an energy of creator, which is this little pebble of gold. And one is activated and you become consumed with what they call the passion. This little pebble of gold becomes a big, radiant, glowing ember of gold light. Your aura switches. You no longer can have an aura that is a silver aura, which gives the appearance of white. Now your aura is gold, the switch. You have to sever the silver cord by performing specific things. You set your life path. This is why they say this is a free will universe. And this is why you use both the good and the bad to sift it out. Aleister Crowley, the one they call the B666, he said, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. But they stop right there. Then they never quote the second half. Will under love. That means that whatever you do, if you don't do it from the pure intent of that love, you're not doing it from the creator. You're doing it from the selfish aspect of the self. So Crowley, being the beast, you will never accept anything that he said. But you got to remember yin and yang, masculine and feminine, positive and negative. The next one comes in where you go over here to Franz Bardon in Initiation in the Hermetics, where he tell you that when you are becoming a realized God self, there is nothing outside of you that you should submit to. Anything that come and approach you, you compel it to identify itself, what its purpose is, and where it come from. So who are you? What do you want? And why are you here? And the rule of the universe is good or bad. It does not matter. If it get in a certain area around you, it has to answer you in truth. If it attempts to use deception, it will try to flee. especially if you are a woman. And I'll get to that in a minute. And so if you ask somebody who you are directly, what do you want and where do you come from? And you understand mentally that tying that to your heart center, they cannot, by the rules of this universe, use deception and mislead you. Our problem is we normally just stop with asking them their name. What's your name? That's not who they are. And so when you look in your New Testament biblical description and they ask the demon, who are you? He said, we are legion, for we are many. They had identified that they were a whole bunch of demons, but demon mean like gods and spirits. And he had to tell them that there was a lot of them. So he couldn't tell them where all of them came from. But at that point, when they cannot give you a full answer, you have two options. You can tell them to flee, and they have to flee according to the universal rules. So you hear like an artist like Tupac say that once you get an understanding in the rules of the game, then the whole game is like a trick. It's like a game to be played. This is what he's talking about. Because if a man, right, go back to this beginning. What is the man's job? The man's only job is to be responsible. His only job is to be responsible. From the beginning, man had responsibility. He got responsibility as a ruler god. Now, the woman had a different function than the man, though her responsibilities are rooted in what she is, the mother. So now, if the man is being responsible and the woman is being the mother, the woman is keeping everything stable and balanced, and the man is covering the outside, the perimeter. He's the point man. So anybody that's been to the military know what the point man is. He goes out and he makes a way for the family to progress and to function most effectively. It's like a little contingent on the battlefield where they send the point man out. So when they exploded the collider, trapped you into this 3D rebirth cycle, that was not the doing of the ones who failed. They were trapped by science, spirit science, because you have to know how the spirit works. In the spiritual dimensions work like music. As the music scale goes up, it goes up in a spiral. That's called the music scale. It's the same way with the dimensions. So when you at the fourth and the third dimension, it's a spiraling effect. And this is how they trap us in the cycles. They trap us in the cycles. That's why if you see a guy with a certain type of female, he always pick the same type of female that gives him the same type of problem. The reason he's doing that is because he's trapped in that cycle. The cycle is the control mechanism. By running you in a circle, you stay confused. By staying confused, you cannot break free. So then time goes on, no more ammo telling them to avoid the projectile weapons, right? Now, they knowing that these projectile weapons is coming because as a result of the collider being exploded, it caused a nuclear war on Earth, which was the cause of the last ice age prematurely and for an extended period of time. And it had nothing to do with the dinosaurs. They was already gone from for a different reason, which I'm not going to get into dinosaurs right now because they are irrelevant to how black people got in the condition, because that part of our history was already over. And so when we look at the timeline, we get all the way up to a BC period, and you have a new species of hominid, sapiens sapien, that came from nowhere. Nobody don't know where they came from. And so you hear everybody talking about the Anunnaki, about the Elohim, different terms. And the problem comes in here. the black people that came with as the children of Nomo and Amo were what you call guardians of the galaxy. They had a purpose here on Earth. They came here on Earth for a specific purpose. Now, we're going to get to that as we go into what they are. They are reptilian, mammalian hybrids that was first purified in the Syrian constellational complex. And once they became purified by spiritual processes, what you know on Earth is alchemical processes, this has taught them how to heal the body from the inside out. This becomes important. When you look at Africa now, and they've been saying this for hundreds of years, but everybody's ignoring it. The disease of HIV and AIDS, the African in the deepest interior that haven't even been exposed to it is developing an immunity to that condition. And the reason is they are the guardians. They the cleanup crew. They came ahead of time because of premonition, as you would call it in the psychic realms, clairvoyance. So Amo and Namo led them to Earth for a purpose, which we're going to get to in a minute. They all agreed to come. Now, some people say, well, there's no record of us being here or agreeing to this. The record is there. And we're going to all get to see how we was able to look at the timeline from outside of the timeline to figure out where we would enter, the person we would choose to be, and the life we would endure in order to bring out our greatest good in order for this cleanup effort that's been taking place. And so we all chose it. And some of us knew that there's a chance that because of the reincarnation system, we might not wake up in this system and have to come back and keep doing it like the people that's trapped with the silver cord. The whole goal was to break the silver cord cycle so that you could all ascend, because they was trying to trap people and prevent people from ascending. So this leads to a future transgression that hadn't happened in the time that Amo and Namo sent their children here. And so they all knew why they were here subconsciously. And this is why they begin to do what they call the ceremonial reminders. They remind us each other of what they went through in the ceremonies, in the rituals. It also tells them why they are here, how long they've been here, and when they would be leaving. All of it is in the Dogon ritual, but you are not initiated into the Dogon tribe as an outsider to get the full measure. So they can't give you the full measure. They only authorize to give you so much. So when you see the stories about the Dogon, they're only authorized to give out so much information, but it's something in their blood that was needed. And this was what they call a healing factor or a recovery factor in the blood of that particular species of reptilian mammalian hybrid. When they came, they had overseers, which are still there overseeing them, because there's only so much that is allowed to be done to them before the full wrath of heaven crashed down on earth and cleaned it up prematurely. Nobody wanted it to be done early because nobody wanted to repeat the misery. And so we have to know where to look to clean up the stories. So when you get to that 10,000 year period, you start to see that there are strange animals being brought from all over the world that had not yet been identified because they were a new species. And the queen has having all of her scientists do various identifications on them, and they are identifying any animal that had not yet been identified. Now, it's only going to be one mammal on the continent of Africa you're not going to find in the hieroglyphics. Every other major mammal will be there, but it's a reason for that. And so all of these different animals being brought to them, there was a particular one that nobody could identify. Now, we at the 10,000 year point. 10,000 years, was approximately 8,000 BC. And there was already a residual conflict between the Egyptian pantheon or royal family and the Babylonian pantheon or royal family. So what you know as the Anunnaki, that was ruled by Anu. Now Anu is also over the Egyptian pantheon because prime creator, prime source, appoint him as ruler god. Now you have to understand the difference between the ruler god and the creator god. The creator gods are the ones that bring everything into existence. They are an exact miniature duplicate of creator. And this creator god in simplified form is just called uterus. That's it. This creator god in its simplified terminology is just called uterus. So just like when you see darkness in the sky, the only other place that is replicated is called uterus. So you see the uterus at the top of the Ankh, because the uterus is the portal of life. Anything coming into life, from the higher intelligences, has to come through the portal of life. So you see at the top of the Ankh, you see the uterus. And so these creator gods are the ones that's responsible for creating in harmony and destroying in beauty. And I'm going to get to that. So the ruler gods are a little bit different because they don't have a uterus. Because they don't have a uterus, they was given a different responsibility. Well, you call it putting them in charge. That's their compensation. The creator gods put the ruler gods in charge as a compensation for being an incomplete deity, because he can't reproduce himself within himself. He has to go outside of himself. He has to cause upheaval and destruction. What do I mean by that? The same way he has to dig up earth in order to build the foundation of his next house. He has to destroy millions and millions and millions of sperm just to get one to an egg. Whereas the creator gods, for one shot, one kill. If you can get your sperm up here, you can make this baby. And this is the conflict between the gods. This is the war. This was what it was all about. So when you get to a certain point, this animal being brought to the queen, and you can look in the Egyptian record and you will see this person or this animal being brought to the queen of Egypt. And she said, "What manner of beast is this?" And nobody knew. None of the scientists could look at it and identify it because it looked kind of human, but it wasn't. It looked kind of primate, but it wasn't. But it looked kind of canid, but it wasn't. And so when they went down all of the stuff that it looked like it could be, then it turned out not to be. Then they start calling in scientists from other places to say, "Is this your product? How did it get here? We have no record." The Babylonian gods, the Babylonian royal families created something unauthorized by prime creator, unauthorized by the chief of the ruler gods. Now, this resulted in a war on earth. This war on earth was because of this thing that they called Adam. It was actually the Adam Kadmon. And the Adam Kadmon is what you call in the Babylonian tongue a golem. And in the process of creating him, it took several hundred years to perfect one. Now, remember what I told you, what the ruler gods got to destroy and fuck up some stuff in order to get one thing right that the creator God get right the first time. Now, here we go. They created a whole subspecies of human. when they dredged the White and the Blue Nile, the Tigris and the Euphrates, they isolated a microorganism. The name escapes me right now, but I'll get y'all the name. This microorganism is an exact replica of what the woman called in her mitochondrial. Now, this becomes important to why black people been suffering. This mitochondrial is the only way you can live if you are a sentient being. You can't live without it. If you're a dog, a cat, a rat, a human, a ape, a reptile, it does not matter. On Earth, you need mitochondrial in order to fuel and power your DNA matrix. So you hear about the 12 tribes of Israel, and then they being stripped down to the tribes of just Dan and Judah. This is your 12-strand DNA helix that was assaulted in Babylon, stripped down to a 2-strand deficient DNA helix. So the problem then came in is when they finally ran the DNA testing to find out what that was, it came back that it was exactly the same DNA sequence as a human, but the codons do not fire correctly. So this created a being that can't ascend, right? But the mitochondrial residual in this being allowed this being to be able to receive the love of the prime creator. This is the transgression. It ain't about no eating no apple in no garden. This is the transgression. It's about corrupting the DNA. It's about messing up the humans. It's when they talk about the bloodlines all the time. That's why all of their rights have to be blood rights. Because they have, as a ruler god, in order to keep this system moving, they have to shed blood. They have to continuously destroy. All right. It has to be a continuous series of destruction before there can be any cleanup of the destruction. Like, for instance, everything they do requires a sacrifice. When you look at the sacrifice is directly tied to the sacrum. The sacrum is where the male being is trapped as the fallen Hiram. And this is what they call the pits of hell, because the sacrum's lowest chakra is red. And this red chakra is one of the most powerful, but it's blocked. And this goes back to that piece of gold in the center in the black goo. So we want to know what happened. You can look at the timeline of history after the queen discovered this was human, and she was irate because they couldn't ascend. So let's look at it. The universities of Timbuktu, they had all of these various empires on the west coast of Africa. You had your Ghana, your Songhai, your Mali. Then you had your Egyptians with the highest knowledge to date that has not been able to be duplicated. Now, you got to keep this in mind, because all of these people we're talking about is dark-skinned, woolly-haired people. Then you had all of your universities and trading centers here on this side in the Amur Inca, what they call America. You had your Temple of Quetzalcoatl. You had your Azteca pyramids, Incan and Mayan. You had your Olmecs. All these people were about my complexion or darker. Some had straight hair, some had woolly hair. Now, these people are the top. There's no scientist that can rival them today, and we've sending spaceships into space, so they tell us. Now, they can't reproduce the Egyptian or Mayan pyramids. Now, we're not under African, nor Asian, nor Dravidian rule of India, nor are we under the Incan rule of what they call the Americas. We're not under that rule. We can only get so far right now. Where we at? They splitting atoms, child's play. They're encoding nanotechnology onto soy product, child's play. In the world of the gods, you are not a true scientist until you can encode a ray of light with your mind, shoot that ray of light where you want for the specific effect that you desire. That's when you're using God power. If you can't do that, then you're just a human scientist aspiring for God abilities. So we get to a point in the history books. Now remember, the history is written by the victor. But if you step back, you can still see it in your face because they can't totally conceal it for you, which is another rule, number 3, that any deception laid down by the ruler gods, the opportunity of discovery must be present with the deception. So even in the deception, that's why you see Paul say that when I try to do good, evil is present with me also. Because the opportunity to discover the righteousness has to even be present when the corruption takes place. So the story of Alexander begins to fall into where we are now. Because if you're going to have your children afflicted in a foreign land for 400 years, it had to be for a reason. It had to be for a reason. Nobody's telling you the reason. Why did Abraham's children need to be afflicted in a foreign land for 400 years? Here it is. Watch Alexander. Who was Alexander and how did he get to power? Right? Who was Alexander the Great and how did he get to power? Well, first you got to understand where Greece came from. Egyptian priests went to the island of Crete and set up educational network. They set up the first schools in Europe. Because Europeans didn't have schools because there was nobody that dwelled there in mass and that required education until they discovered what the Nation of Islam called Yaqub's grafted devil, which was the Babylonian transgression on earth because they done it without permission and they didn't perform the rites. This is how they know how to follow the rules now, because all of this came from them not performing the rites. Now, many of them, because of the order of the Queen of Heaven and Earth, came into human form and was stripped of their memory of the transgression so that they wouldn't rebel against the just redemption. But what was the redemption of the transgression of the Kadmon? Now, in the story I did on Lilith, when I was telling y'all about Lilith and then she was being the first consort, it tells you what that transgression when they created him as a golem. And it goes into more detail. And so, because of this, the genetics were out of order. They were slightly off. Now, in the Old Testament, where you see this jealous God that they call Yahweh, in the Babylonian pantheon, that's Enlil. He the one with the booming voice. That's why his name is Enlil. Lil mean voice, the booming voice. En mean Lord. He is the Lord of the booming voice, which is voice of many waters. But he was the ranking earth God according to the order of the Most High that they call Anu. That's the prime ruler God. He the one that they call the Most High. He the one, whether you're a good being or a bad being, it doesn't matter as long as your intent is pure. He will not misjudge you. He will only judge you according to your responsibilities in the path you choose. So he don't really judge you. He let you judge yourself. He just say, so be it. And then it's all taken care of according to what your transgression was. And so when the human that they call the Kadmon, the Adam Kadmon, the false Adam was created, Anu came down. because of the conflict it created, was so bad that he had to physically leave what you call the highest heaven, which they call, in the Babylonian times, they call it Nibiru, the high seat. A Nibiru on earth, we call it the highest heaven, but it's called the high seat. It's the ruler seat of this galaxy. It's the high seat. He is the supreme ruler of the galactic council of the 72 elders, of which my number being 50. I'm the 50th of the 72 elders, being the crown prince of heaven and earth. Soon as mama come down, then I get that seat. So these beings, Anu, Enlil, and Enki following the orders of Enlil, don't agree, but he's outranked. He have to follow the orders, and he don't want to suffer the wrath of the transgression of the gods. And so he did create what was not supposed to be created again, because he did it the first time, they washed him away. This is why he didn't want to do it a second time. And this is where they say that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they was fair in Genesis. What happened then, and they say they went in and they took all of which they had chosen. Because of that transgression, and this DNA has to be synced before the ascension. The ascension happens in the Aquarian age. Everybody has to have the right to ascend, or we got to go back and do it all over from the beginning of the Piscean age. And it will be harsher if we have to do it all over. Okay, so now what happened? This genetics has to be cleaned up. Now, there's on YouTube a debate with Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and a eugenicist. The eugenics philosophy is to destroy all of the humans that they call unfit breeders. Look at the word eugenics, and right in the word eugenics, you'll see that it's EA, which is the EU, because under the Grimm's Law of Grammar, of all vowels are interchangeable. The EA, which is Enki, and genics or genes. Enki's role is to purify the genetic pool that he corrupted using the science of eugenics. Now watch what Francis tell him. All Caucasians are predisposed to a very specific disease of the central nervous system. They cannot assimilate that piece of gold into becoming the serpent fire. They cannot use too much of the silver cord either. The silver cord is raw wisdom. So they can separate the eternal life from the eternal wisdom. And this is why you have your Kundalini with the two serpents. One side of the DNA is wise. The other one is eternal. The wisdom in eternity, it's the balance of nature is actually all it's saying. And so you see your Kundalini rising, or your Kundalini going around the staff. That is actually your DNA helix. The staff is called the middle pillar, which is a sign of your spine. So when the light comes down the middle pillar, if your silver and gold lights are not both what they call liberated, they have to be liberated. This is the severing of the silver cord and the awakening of the gold. This is the marriage of the divine masculine, the gold, and the divine feminine, the freed female energy that is trapped. The freed female energy is the silver cord. How did they get it? Now, while they were doing their dirt in Babylon, the dancers was reading something called a Tree of Life in South Africa. They called it Iwas. And I know for a lot of the TV buffs that's going to sound real familiar, or movie buffs, I should say, because the movie Avatar. In the movie Avatar, they are actually telling you the story. When they call it unobtainium, that's the actual gold. Unobtainium is the gold. The Avatar was the artificial cadmine that trapped souls. The artificial one. So when you see them on that ship, that's actually inside what you call the moon. This is where Sheol is, inside your moon. That's why it always faces the same side. It's actually a battleship. And so it will leave if necessary. You will look up one day during a full moon and that sucker will take off flying across your galaxy, and you will be twisted in the brain because you don't believe that it's a battleship. It's a battleship. And every single crater, and you can ask any scientist if it's true, every single crater on there can only go to the exact same depth. It can't go any deeper because of the material that the battleship is made of. And so when we, Guardians of the Galaxy, we didn't catch it fast enough. We knew they was up to no good, but we didn't know what it was. The Guardians of the Galaxy, the keepers of the Earth Gate, which were the women, when they went on that campaign to subjugate the women, it was an all-out subjugation of the feminine silver cord, the divine wisdom, because they know if they undermine the wisdom of the mother, the child can never attain the highest aspect of Phoenix, which is the full awakening of the golden light inside. And so they subjugated the women, and they created that cadmine so that they can trap both of the souls of the female and the male on Earth. Then they start doing tricks, and they start doing things with the physiology that traps the mind. They start putting chemicals in food years ago. When everybody think that the Monsanto and all that is new. They've been doing this for years. They get you to eat the blood. Now you notice that in the Levitical law, they said that the food has to be kosher, but you don't understand that in order for it to be kosher, it has to first be drained of all blood. The whole purpose of making it kosher is to keep you from eating the actual blood, because the vibration in the blood is what keeps you delirious in the brain. It keeps you just delirious enough to vibrate at a low enough frequency so you can't really see what you see. You see it, it's there, it's exactly what your subconscious is telling you, but because the vibration is only allowing your conscious mind to go by the script you was given. Then, yes, Jillian, it was eyewash. Exactly. The story is the exact story of Avatar. It's the exact story of when what they call the Anunnaki came to Earth. That's the exact story. The only thing is they changed enough to confuse you. The whole Star Wars epic is a story from the same Sumerian tablets. They didn't write a new story. They got to tell it to you. You have to always be reminded. They don't have to tell you the totality of the story and the intricate details, but you got to always have a reminder, and so that when your subconscious break from that slumber state, you recognize, oh man, yeah, I was here. Oh, that's why I was here. I forgot. Oh, I did that. And so from Alexander is when the all-out assault on the female began. Because before Alexander, now you got to remember, Alexander is the first recorded homosexual Earth ruler. It's the reason I'm telling you that, and I don't care what your gender or your sexuality is, it has nothing to do with the truth. It's a reason for that. Alexander was selected by Enlil himself, given all of this military knowledge by Enlil himself, to go into the Indus Valley and use the pattern. The pattern for the subjugation of blacks in America is the caste system of the Indus Valley. Watch the march of Alexander into the Indus Valley. Everybody think that he was going for global conquest. He was going for knowledge. He could never conquer the world because at that time, they did not have an answer what we would call the Candace Queens. There was no military answer for the wisest generals that the world ever known in what we know in Ethiopia as the Candace Queens. That's why he didn't go and even attempt to penetrate the interior of the continent, because it was two places that was off limits as the cleanup began, and it's covered in one term. It's called the Absu, and the Absu is the sub-Saharan African, which are the children of Nomo and Amo, who came to lend their genetics to help clean up what they knew would happen in Babylon. The cleanup is over. If you think you see somebody white, you don't. There are no more what you would call white people or Caucasians. They gone. The cleanup required people from multiple galaxies to come here and use both positive and negative reinforcements in order to clean up the mess. There would be no rite of ascension for an entire group of people. And there is no way that the Queen of Heaven and Earth would sign off on allowing humanity to ascend and leave an entire cross-section of humanity to just be vaporized into nothing. Her exact words to me was, you can't throw people away like garbage. They not trash. If they can feel love, then they should be able to receive love. And if they should be able to receive love, they should have the right to the wisdom and the right to eternal life. Love is all because all is love, is what she told me. So she said, son, find them a way out. Or as many as you can save. We can't throw all these people away. They not trash. She said, my heart go out for them because they're not allowed to form a family. They live with the dogs. And so she gave us the reminder in the story of Romulus and Remus. In the story of Romulus and Remus is the founding of what we know as Rome. Because the dog, the wolf, is a natural guardian of the innocent. So everybody that's scared of a wolf is a damn fool. The wolf is a natural guardian of the innocent. And watch what they do. They still do it to this day, no matter how bad the humans hunt the wolf. They still do it today. They're a natural guardian of the innocent. If a child is found alone in the jungle and a pack of wolves come across that child, they adopt it and they feed it, and nurse it, and hunt for it, teach it how to survive on all fours. And so we look and we read in the history how these peoples resigned to walking on all fours and living with packs of wolves. And she said, you can't do that to people, baby. You can't let them get away with this. I said, Mama, what do you want me to do? She said, save as many as you can. She said, I can't give my love away and let all these people die and never know the rite of ascension and never understand what it's like to have a family. They never had a family structure. They never had a grandmama to give them guidance if she was upset. And so your biblical stories say, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, which is the biggest crock of bullshit. Because the Queen of Heaven and Earth loved us all, and she gave her only begotten son. It was no sacrifice for none of the ruler gods, because death is part of their reality as warriors. And this is how they received the right of resurrection. The right of resurrection in the realm of the gods is because ruler gods have to live and die like men. This is where you get in Psalms 82:6. I have said ye are all gods, children of the Most High. And you shall fall asunder like men and die like the princes of the earth, the men, the male figures. Women are eternal. Women are eternal. women can actually drop their physical form whenever they realize what they are and walk around without an interruption in who and what they are. We as men don't have that right, but we had a right for women to allow us to be out front as a worthy servant of the Creator. And so the story is Solomon was instructed to build a temple. I went over this in the story of Hiram, so that y'all can understand what happened. When you read the demons that Solomon was given control over, you won't really see demons, because they're all governing one type of birth defect or another that they were assigned to clean up. Now go to the story. As a matter of fact, y'all revisit the comments in here, because I'm going to put the story in there and it's going to go over all of this stuff with Solomon questioning the demons. But you're going to find that in every one of them, they are what you call either restricted or complicated by an angel. This is your so-called fallen angels. They're not fallen. They didn't fall. This is what you're not understanding. They came to clean up behind those rogue ruler gods. Now, when we cleaned it up genetically, we are giving everybody on earth the right to choose ascension or not to ascend. You can't take that right once everybody has that God gene, that golden light is turned on. So then they say that that the sun is the light of the world, and they making that in reference to the Christ, because when that love energy of the Queen of Heaven and Earth get close enough, all of the people that's not right they're gonna short circuit. It's gonna be too overwhelming. It can't exist at the same place at the same time. It's just a basic law of physics. The corruption in the, what you call in science, the entropy, the discord, the chaos, it cannot exist in the presence of the divine love of the Queen of Heaven and Earth. And we are restricted, men, from fully realizing the love in its totality until we prove ourselves worthy. And that's why it said each must show himself approved of the glory of the Lord. This is all they talking about. You gonna say you a man, and you're gonna say you a righteous man, and you're gonna walk away and leave a woman to tend to your seed and not feel anything for it. That's not righteous. And so when you look at the crucifixion and you analyze what's taking place, so they take this, what they call the Christ or the Son of Man, and they go to nail him on this cross. Now, what is the cross? The word cross comes from the word crux. The crux meaning at the point or the center of something. And they call this the crucifixion. So that tells me the word fiction means false or story, false story, a story that's not rooted in the truth. So if the crux of the story is rooted in something that's not true, what's not true? What's wrong with the story to make us not see it? Okay, so look at the story. They're telling you the story about a man that was crucified on the cross, as they call him the Son of Man, which is a mockery term because he's actually the son of the mother. And they call him the Son of Man like a slap in the face, like kids in the playground say, ha, 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 you ain't got no daddy. Yeah, like that. That's the Son of Man title, is that. Nah, 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 you ain't got no daddy. And so me, telling them, so my mama whoop your daddy ass. How you like that? Now they all got attitude. Because they can't do nothing about it. And so at the point where the judgment is being rendered is in the book of Daniel. When you see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that is Anu, Enki, and Enlil. Now they can change the name if they don't change the story. They can change the story in part as long as they leave the key points and as long as they don't change the name. Now the word Daniel means the judgment of El, or the judgment of God. So when Nebuchadnezzar has this dream and he translated, you see Daniel telling him what the dream means, that he was going to suffer a judgment. Now this is Daniel. And because of whatever it is that he did to the Israelites, this is the 12-strand DNA, but it wasn't him. You got to keep that in mind. Nebuchadnezzar, or what they call in Egypt, Thoth, the chief scientist, as his incarnation at that time, he was a different being with a different name. And anyway, they accuse him of being the one who created the genetic suit falsely. Falsely, you got to remember that. So that's why you see in the New Testament when he say, I am not of your father. Your father was a liar from the beginning, and there is no truth in him. Who is he talking about? He's talking about Enlil. He's talking about Yahweh, Jehovah. Enlil is a warrior, and he used every aspect of war, good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. He only wants effectiveness. He wants to be effective in his conquest as a ruler god. He wants to be the greatest. He is ambitious. And so he will use the good and the bad. That's why I say, I am the Lord thy God. I create good and I create evil. This is Enlil talking. Because he's telling you from a military standpoint, I will just as soon sign a peace treaty with your ass as blow your ass up. It doesn't matter to me. I will just as soon sign a peace treaty as blow your ass up. It doesn't matter to me. Enlil, this is who's telling you this. Now, Enki, who you hardly ever hear of, when you hear about the gods talking in the Old Testament, you hardly ever hear Enki, and you hardly ever see the queen talking in the Old Testament. The Queen of Heaven and Earth does not even really speak up into the New Testament, because everything that she was telling them during the judgment, they systematically remove her half so that they can tell their story. And so they only allow you to have the part relevant to the end game of the final judgment. And so the transgression is this. So Solomon is commissioning the construction of the temple. What are you talking about? Well, the temple is the temple of man, meaning that these physical forms that's been stripped down from a 12-strand DNA under Isis and Ra as the El, or the gods Isis and Ra. So you got your Israel, your Isis, your Ra, and your El. El is what they call Hebrew term, but it's not really Hebrew. It's actually a ayah in Egypt, but it becomes Al in Arabic and El in Hebrew. It's ayah. So when they say Israel, they are telling you that the original 12 strands was under the domain and the rule of Isis and Ra, or wisdom and eternal life. So that's your tree of eternal life and your tree of wisdom, and you get to Genesis. And so what ended up happening is the Kadmon, because Enlil got hasty, wanted to allow him to reproduce, they crossed out Lilith because she wasn't going to put up with their bullshit and they couldn't do nothing about it, and she'd have whooped their ass. So they used deception. Now remember, Enlil used whatever it take to win. It don't matter. If it's going to win, that's what he going to use. There's only one person that he not going to fuck with. And y'all looking at him. They don't want to mess with him. And so Enlil knew when he was laying that bullshit down what was about to happen. And this is your Zidra Sudra story. Your Noah. being the child of Enlil, because Noah is Enlil's son, and his father couldn't believe that Enlil did that. But anyway, everybody think that it's Enki's son. It's not, because he wanted Noah to spread the silver light only. And so when he created Noah, now Farrakhan did a series of lecture called Giving Birth to a God. If he really knew how to give birth to a God, he would know the difference. You can give birth to a creator God or a ruler God, or you can give birth to a creative ruler God who can use art and science to create and rule, which is a whole nother, which is your Pied Piper story, which I get to. I don't know if it's going to tie in later. But Enlil gave the order. He gave birth to Noah. So in the flood at that time, that flood didn't encompass the globe. That flood didn't encompass the globe. Had nothing to do with a global flood. This flood only covered parts of Babylon in the Middle East, because this is where everybody thought that the Kadmon was. So when they discovered the trail that they took through Turkey, now notice what they keep telling you, that the ark landed on Mount Ararat in northern Turkey, because they're telling you the trail that was taken by Ea up the rope. That's why they call it the rope. Everybody think it's because they hedged them in with the mountain range that they call it the rope. No, they call it the rope is because it was that they called the ascent of the mountains. They had to climb the mountains, and some of the mountain climbers, in order to get rid of some of the babies, used ropes, and they used this as they marched. And you hear about Dr. Richard King talk about the Grimaldi going into Europe, in the area of France. Well, the Grimaldi were what we call albinos, but they carried the gold and the silver light. They actually have two types of albino. You got one of them that is a melanin deficient albino. That's a true albino. Then you have one that's not. This is not really an albino. The one that's not melanin deficient is not really an albino. They call it a moon child. Now, the moon child is very powerful. Now, these are your Irish and your Scottish peoples. They are not black and they are not white. And this is why they refer to as Europe's redhead stepchild. They came down through the DNA chain under the order of the Most High to assist Solomon in the cleanup. And this is how they end up chasing. They've been looking for her, the redhead princesses who they've been looking for, because they knew that the redhead princess was going to give birth to the one that would come and clean this shit up at the end and tell everybody what it was all about. So Alexander rising up also he was a half son of Enlil. It's why he was so influential and charismatic, and why he was homosexual, because Enlil cannot stand the creator gods. He became a homosexual in order to smite them and spite them. He created homosexuality. And the reason why nobody at the end of the age can be condemned for it, when what they call the relaxing of creation, is because when he created it, he had to get it cleared through higher channels as a way to bullshit basically the women. That's what it boiled down to. But his justification was so that men can receive affection in the times of war away from women. That was the justification that he gave. In the free will universe, it was told to him that as long as the men freely violated the gender contract, they wouldn't be punished. But if they went to a realm where the gender contract was the order, then the only way that they would be allowed to participate freely in homosexual activity would be when the relaxing of creation at that time. That's why your biblical prophecies say that it will be as the time of Sodom. But Sodom didn't have nothing to do with homosexuality. Your modern day churches gave it that connotation. Sodom was just straight up every type of corruption you could think of. It was just pure corruption. It didn't have nothing to do with your sexuality because that wasn't the closing of the age. And so the edict would have to be given because the contract is up for discussion. And the transition from, it was up for discussion between the era of Aries and Pisces. It was shot down. Homosexuality was shot down when it was up for discussion at that time. I gave a whole thing on the gender contract. But when it was shot down, then it had to be written in law. What do I mean by that? It had to be told to the people or written down so the people couldn't forget. Now, you have two types of people now. Because of the Cadmon, the memory cannot facilitate what they call divine wisdom, which never forgets. It's got more memory data space than every computer that you could think of, including your AI. It never forgets. But if the brain, or what you would call your RAM, your short-term memory, can't process well enough, you can't facilitate that higher wisdom. It'll cause a breakdown. You end up Stephen Hawkins. Now, if you go look at Stephen Hawkins is the poster child for not being able to ascend, being looped back into the reincarnation cycle. They cheated him. They cheated him out of an opportunity to be able to ascend now. This is why he professed to be atheist. Because he knew that as long as they kept him alive with the machines and he didn't get into a new suit before he did, that he wouldn't be able to ascend because he couldn't match his solar fire or his divine masculine and then his divine feminine. So that is the exact disease that he had that stopped them from ascending, that Francis Welsen is debating the eugenicists about. It's the exact same disease. You can look it up, and I will go deep into that. But right now, you have to understand that there was a series of birth defects, but that was the one that stopped the ascent. That stopped everybody from being able to ascend. And so when she said no people can be thrown away like trash, and that everybody had to have a right to have a family, every female had to learn how to be a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a wife. She said when you have women that can give love and receive love, that does not know the responsibilities of being a mother, a sister, a daughter, and a wife, then you have deprived creation of one of its most beautiful creations, the mother. Because the female learning all of those roles become what you call a matriarch. And she learned how to balance a family first, because a balanced family creates a balanced society. And this is your crucifixion. It's the ripping apart of the family. It's the hands nailed that can't build their own. It's the thorns on the head so you can't think. It's the feet being nailed so you can't freely walk and roam without a passport. It's the spear being jabbed in the side so that the urine in the blood can contaminate the blood. The story is right there. It's a fiction, but there's a crux to it. There's a central point of this fiction. It's telling you the story. And so they cast the lots of the fabric of this man on the auction block. They ripped his royal garment. This is his royal family. Because you got to remember that the royal garment, what do they call your nuclear family? The fabric of the family, your family fabric. Why is they calling it that? Those are your clues. They have to give you the opportunity to discover it. Okay, so now you got your family structure being ripped apart, being sold on the auction block. Why are we doing this? What is this all about? because they told you was in slavery, but you was never in slavery. These were POWs. So you don't even know your own history. You don't know the history of this country. So I'm going to got to go over a real fast history lesson starting from Alexander. And as you go and you start putting all of the pieces where I'm telling you they go, and you step back and look at the story, you're going to say, holy shit. So here it is. Enlil rose Alexander up, sent him into the Indus Valley for the information on how to keep the caste system in order. And as a result, he came out of there with a divide and conquer doctrine of caste using skin. All right? He used skin and tone, complexion as the standard. But it won't work right now. In Greece, this will never fly because of Helen. You got to remember this. In Greece, the divide and conquer method of white supremacy won't fly because of Helen. Now, who is Helen? Go back to Lilith and you'll know who Helen was. Now, notice that the Greeks had this high culture, but then Rome rise to power and the culture has not risen beyond the great glory of Greece. But don't nobody ask the question why. Now watch this. When you leave Greece and they high culture and Rome takes power, right? When Rome takes power, Helen becomes a man. This is when they sever the head of Medusa. Basically, Medu, Ten, Sa, a priesthood. Any of the Egyptian priests will tell you what I'm talking about. It's the 10th order of the Sa priesthood, Medusa. And so when they do this, they switch him to a man. This is the beheading of Medusa. This is the changing of the priesthood, the changing of the guard at that time, the changing of the priesthood. Now you got to remember that Helen started off as a female god in Greece, high culture. They ballet, opera, dance, high culture. Rome, no culture, war, blood, a male Helen. And this is not hard to look up. It's all in our face. It's right there. Okay, now, Helen takes over. Now, the Egyptian priests wrote the Greek language. So what do the ruler guy got to do? He got to parallel this with some intellectual languages. He got to try to come up with something to parallel Greek. So he went to a relative in a different priesthood that was rooted in Carthage. And he told him that he needed a scholarly language for the Romans to speak because he wanted to get them away from the Greek. Now, when they came up with the language, they called it Latin. But the Latin language settled what we know as Spain, the area of Spain coming all the way down into Italy. So now we have what you call your Romance language. Your Romance languages stem from Latin. So you got your French, your Dutch, your Spanish, Italian, those kind of language that came, they call them the Romance languages. Now, look, Rome is said to have been founded by Romulus and Remus, who were two twins suckled by the wolf. Now, the she-wolf. They made specific that they always, now it's obvious if they're being suckled by a wolf that it wouldn't be a male. But they always make it clear they were suckled by the she-wolf, right? This she-wolf is called She-Ra. Now, you'll see her in the word siren. It's She-Ra. The howl of the wolf, the siren, She-Ra. It's the same word, but it's slightly changed for the cultural difference. So this wolf, this she-wolf, was a very specific wolf. And she chose very specific set of twins. Well, what's the story of Romulus and Remus? Because we got to know how Rome came to power in order to understand why we accept this punishment or how we even get into the punishment. We had already accepted it to clean up the genetic mess, which is the story that Solomon gave of commissioning his demons to build the temple of man, where those who couldn't ascend would be able to have the right of ascension. So this is Solomon's temple that we talking about rebuilding. Only Hiram know that because he know the dimensions. Now, when Romulus and Remus become grown, one of them is taken from the wolf and given an education, and the other one is sent off to war. This is significant because now it's showing you you're going to have two fields, warriors and scholars in Rome. But there's no art, which comes from Greece. Now, because there's no art, it removes the feminine nature, the feminine aspects out of the equation. The art is the expression of the soul relayed into reality. That was done on purpose to slow down how much artistic ability is expressed to allow the rage. And basically it's like a dude in hitting puberty. When you pull back the estrogen and you turn up the testosterone, you get pure rage. This is what's taking place as these two, the war and scholastics, and step on the art. Guys, keep the artist down, because when you start expressing your soul's expression, you can watch this with any artist. And this is why they don't like artists coming in elders, like 30, 40, 50 years old. They won't have a very long career coming in at an older age. No matter how good they are at whatever they do, they don't want older artists, because when your soul burn off the foolishness of the youth, your Sako Ma, your monkey mind, when your mind burn the foolishness of the youth off and you facilitate that higher wisdom, and you can infuse that with that love chemistry, at that very point, you can no longer be oppressed. You can't be oppressed because you can see too clearly, and this is the problem with the artist. That's why you see them stopping artists early, only allowing them to do so much, right? And so, art is the feminine expression. They don't want that. They don't want anything feminine under the ruler gods, the male ruler gods. They don't want nothing feminine under that, because that feminine balances out that masculine, and it makes everybody that becomes balanced strive for perfection in self. Not the perfection like building the perfect house outside the self, building the perfect self inside the self. And so when Romulus learns, Remus dies in war. So now they got one male figure, the Roman. Now, when you go to the prophecy, you see that they had the head of gold and shoulders of bronze and the silver and all the way down to the feet of clay and iron, right? And they told you these are the Holy Roman empires. These are the Roman empires, right? The last one is going to be toppled by a single stone hewn from a mountain. Okay, now when you go through the mythology, in order to find out what this is talking about, you got to look for a stone that's hewn from a mountain that is tied to some type of wisdom and war, right? So looking all over the world, you end up in China. You end up with the story of a guy they call Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong, they call him the Monkey King. Now, this is no coincidence, because the story of Sun Wukong say he journeyed to the West for wisdom, because the Buddha sent him to the West for wisdom. You don't get no further west than this, North America. Now, the story says that the Buddha sent him. So now you got to go to where was the Buddha? Buddha's in Tibet and India. So now you got to go there. Does this story have a correlation, parallel, or attachment in India. Yeah. This is the story of Hanuman. Hanuman is the Monkey King in India who strikes out for wisdom to the West. But he had a different name. Okay, so now you got this dude, started off that he was asleep in the mountain. Some lady come along, hew him out the mountain. He fall down out the mountain, and he started to defend the heavens and the earth. As he started to defend the heavens and the earth, they find out that he is unruly, untamable, and he a bad motherfucker. So, excuse the language. So they sent him to go get wisdom, because you cannot be a just ruler, because wisdom precedes justice. And they know that this is the only one they feared. As it says that Sun Wukong is the only undefeated. And they had to use all these trickeries and deceptions in order to deceive Sun Wukong. It's the same story as Hanuman. Okay, now watch what happened. They gave us the story of the Planet of the Apes, which I addressed several times already. The Planet of the Apes is written in France. France is where the fall took place. The Planet of the Apes said that the apes rise in North America. It's right there. If you go to the original movie, The Planet of the Apes, you actually see a destroyed Statue of Liberty laying right there on the beach. It's telling you the story. So now, Hanuman had a different name in the Middle East because they referred to him as a great and mighty hunter. Well, what the hell? Who the hell is this great and mighty hunter? Well, they said he was so wicked that they didn't write his history. Yeah, I bet they didn't. They couldn't deceive anybody about his history because he had to be a badass in order to erase his history. Because they're notorious for the smear campaign. They're notorious for the smear campaign. So who is the most smeared and feared in the Middle East? You got to tie them all together or else they don't match. If they don't match, if he can't walk you all the way to North America with it, then he don't know what he's talking about. In the Middle East, there was somebody that all of the so-called gods feared. He was a regular dude, a man. His name was Nimrod. Nimrod, they gave him all of these false titles. Now, they said that he married his mother, whose name was Semiramis. Now, it's funny that Semiramis is also known as Ishtar. And Ishtar is also known as Inanna. And Inanna is also known as Isis. And Isis is the only queen of heaven and earth. She's the only one that can run this. So what did they really say? They said that he married his mother. That's some crap. I'm going to show you what happened. In the story, if you know the crowning of a king, in the coronation process, this is what takes place. The queen places the crown on the king's dome. When she declares that he is king. Now remember, who is this crowning you? This is the queen. But she's declaring this guy king. This guy just so happened to be her son. But when he becomes king, she is giving him her equal power to rule her kingdom as her ordained ruler God. Her ordained ruler God. This is your Christ aspect, your anointing. So when she say that he is ordained to rule, that means that if she choose to, she can intervene, but she don't have to. She just let him run the show. All right, son, go run the show. Now, if he ever gets stuck, but you shouldn't get stuck if he did his studies. If he learned how to apply wisdom, and that wisdom does produce justice, he won't never need to go back to mama for nothing. But the coronation ceremony is called the sacred marriage of heaven and earth. So maybe he did marry his mama, because in order to marry his mama, that means he would have to unite heaven and earth. He would have to unite Shu and Tefnut. He would have to have the authority to bring Shu and Tefnut together as one. He would have to call heaven down to earth as the alchemist, right? So, in order to clean up the genetic cesspool, many of us who were involved in the cleanup didn't want to be involved. We didn't want to be involved and we rebelled. But this is not the fall because nobody fell for it. We weren't punished for it. But because our job as the immune system of Earth, Black people is the immune system. So whatever disease being come on Earth, we're going to end up cleaning it up sooner or later. So this is why they call us the guardians of the galaxy. Everywhere we go outside of Earth, and I don't like to talk about outside of Earth because we on Earth, we need to deal with Earth. But everywhere we go, our job is to find the system that's there and balance it. Find the system that's there and balance it. All right. Now, when the ages, which is actually a reigniting of the creation spark in the current creation, it's called an ascension because there's a certain amount of things that had to take place to move into the next age. That's called a leveling up. That means you exhausted all of this stuff down here. Now you got to go up to the next level for a whole different class. Now, this originally, the third dimension was created as a simulator. And it was supposed to be quarantined off from the ruler gods. And that the only ruler god was the one queen of heaven and earth. And that her name was Ta'ert. Now she is known as the great mother of creation, in whom wombs we all rest. And so the ones of us that didn't want to come over here were drugged over here to do what we agreed that we would do. Now, we have a priest by the name of Credo Mutwa. And if you see how he lived, nobody would be more pissed off than me, because for Black people the world over, he is our equivalent of what the Pope professed to be, right? He is the keeper of the sacred knowledge of what you call the Zulu, the people of the heavens, the stars. Every time he tried to put the sacred elder council together, they kill them all. They're not allowed to do anything to him. And he's not even allowed to die a physical earth death until he passed certain secrets forward to the next generation that's shaping this next reality that we're moving in. So now if you go back to the Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, the Theosophical Society, and you read in the Sacred Doctrine where she talk about the emerging gold race. Then you go to the Nubians and you see Malachi York wrote about something called a neutrinoid. Now these gold people are also written by a Tibetan monk, Rampa Tilab, saying it's because they call them the gold race to come. Now, the gold race is what you call your Brazilianized people. They call them Brazilianized is because this is what the end result is going to look like to people in Brazil. Brazil was on the fast track. The United States is called the Great Melding Pot for this purpose. It's a genetic cleanup. So now let's get to America. In the American history, we have to first go back. We got to go back. Okay, Rome came to power. Well, there was a priesthood called the Nun priestesses. The Nun priestesses. N-U-N. They had to do something about that. They couldn't destroy it. It was against the rules. They had to have a contingency for the Nun priestesses, but they couldn't destroy it because it was against the rules. What was their option? They could deceive you about it. They're allowed to use deception, but they have to leave it where you can see the truth. They have to leave it where you can see the truth. So I'm going to show it to you. The Nun priestesses became called nuns. It's the same spelling as the Egyptian Nun. They wear the black robe of the Nun with the light veil. With the light veil over them. That's what the trimming of the white is. That's why they call them penguins. The light veil tells you that they are all looking toward one light. Now, they're going to show you a picture, and the Pope going to be kissing her feet. It's called the Black Madonna. She's going to always be wearing white, but she's called the Black Madonna. Look at her skin, you'll know why. Now, this was the original high priestess of the Nun. They call her the Black Pope, but they never show her to you. She there, she a hostage. She there, and she's a hostage. Y'all got to remember that. And every time yes, Nun priestess, N-U-N, the high priestess, what they call the Madonna, or in English, it would be the madam, or the lady of the house, or Our Lady Notre Dame. Now, y'all got to understand that that was a warning. There was a ship that sat there through the entire Notre Dame fire. Y'all have to realize what this warning was. And this is what I'm telling you right now. The true priestess, high priestess of the Nun priesthood is a hostage. She is alive and well. They cannot do anything to her, but they can conceal her from you. Now, when the Pope say, I'm the closest living man to God, this is what he's talking about. He is the only one through all. This is why the archbishops got to have that thing. They got to find out who can get close enough to her without dying. Whoever can get the closest enough to her without dying, he gonna be your next pope. The symbiote that's in him, because he got a symbiote that go through his eye and look like a little worm, go through his eye, and it mounts in the part of the brain that connects both hemispheres. It mounts there, and it burrows in, and then it controls both sides of the brain from there. Now, they holding the Nun priestess, the Madonna, hostage. If you walk past a Madonna in simulation, meaning what they call a tephilim, a statue, a physical representation of her, and he does not pay his respects, he will physically drop dead. That's why you will always see him kissing her feet. If you go into his office, he will always be a picture of her. He can't escape the rule. Now, I want him out. I want him out. And I can move him, but I first have to move the people, because I already gave him his order. And as long as the people ignore it, and they don't have to do nothing, they don't have to kill none of them. All they have to do is expose that he's been ordered. It will empower her, the Madonna, to tell him, you got until May the 5th to get out. She already know the date. He already know the date, but they can't do it until the spell is broke. The spell is called the spell of sleep. The spell of sleep was implemented so that the penance can be paid for the genetic mishap that took place in Babylon. When they created a human that was actually an android, gave him partial sentience, but did not allow him the right of ascension, in violation of the rules. Because of this, the cleanup crew, which are a aspect of the creator gods, it's an aspect. They have to have warrior caliber traits. Some of them are male, but the majority of them are female. But y'all gotta understand this, because a lot of dudes are gonna start going crazy trying to have sex with these women. They don't know what they're dealing with. I put a post up and I warned y'all that you 200,000 vote women will not be able to have a 9-vote dude because he's gonna go crazy. You're gonna overload his circuits and he will be like an autistic. He will not be able to function and you're gonna think there's something wrong with him. It is. You overloaded him. So, look on my page. There's a telling you how the energy exchange works, because you need to know so that you can turn it down if you got a 9-vote man. How you know if you got a 9-vote man? All you got to do is look at his responsibilities. Look at his responsibilities. Is he doing the things he's telling you he's gonna do? Is the things that he's not getting done, is he making an effort to attempt to accomplish them? Because in the 3D world, you don't always get everything done that you set out to do, because the other people's wills are allowed to interfere and become obstacles to yours. You just have to stay your path. So if he's trying his best to do the best he can as a man, and his whole sole aim ain't money and pussy, his aim is to help his woman build a family and to try to get to some sense of sensibility and escape the oppression. If he's focused on some real stuff, because the sex and money is artificial. The sex is there for a reason. It's bait. It's a lure. So if the man fall for the lure, he can never get to the substance. And this is how you know. The one who can't get to the substance came as a patriarchal oppressor. He can't get to the substance. He only want to oppress. Because of this, when the substance is there, meaning that you got a woman doing everything she's supposed to do, and you don't, as a man, and then going into this new age, because this didn't apply like this before now, because the women didn't have a power. If you don't understand that, you better watch. There's going to be a lot of dudes going to be going to their sites trying to figure it out. Now, and a lot of them just going to have like strokes, especially when they get like over 40. They're just going to have a stroke because the energy won't be able to work if he don't do his self-work. He got to do the work on himself if he want his woman to raise him with her energy. The women are the controllers of the mitochondria. They can control it and hive with it. The man will get caught up in it. This is what they call a rapture. In Anita Baker's song, Caught Up in the Rapture of Love. This is what she's talking about. And this rapture of love, if you don't pursue the wisdom of the ages as a man, as you get older, your brain memory starts, Alzheimer's, dementia type symptoms at an early age because you're not doing your job. Now, going into this new age, the Aquarian age, in the recovery, in the redemption, part of it is for y'all to know white supremacy. White supremacy as a doctrine is military in nature, right? Political in scope. Applied as an aspect of divide and conquer. On the field, what it looks like is caste, superiority, complexity. The lighter, the better, the darker, the worse. The Dravidians is in the same spot in India. The Ainu in Japan is in the same spot. And you look around the world and it look like everywhere you got dark skin, woolly hair people, they're oppressed. They're not oppressed no more. The only thing got them oppressed now is their own conditioning of their less than God self. Now, that means that there is no more of those people. That don't mean you won't have no more birth defects though, because those are going to be residuals as the gene. They're going to fade over time. The birth defect's going to fade over time. And it's not going to all clean up in one day. Because the wrath of the woman is a thing of beauty. The wrath of the man is a thing of destruction. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. If you want to know who is behind a disaster, right? Is it a ruler God or a creator God? I told some of the sisters this yesterday. When it's a creator God, which is a feminine God, is destroying. It's like an ice princess, turning everything into this beautiful ice land. But you can't survive if you don't know how to survive in the ice. But it's so beautiful to look at. But when it came, it destroyed everything in its wake. When you see a tornado coming and it's sent by a creator feminine aspect, you see all these beautiful blues and purples and grays as those roaring black, as the background of those roaring black clouds that's coming in as your tornado or hurricane. You'll see it. It's going to be so pretty, but don't stay there. Don't get caught in that beauty, because that's going to be the wrath to follow. Now, you'll see the wrath, but it's going to be encased with the beauty. This is how the creator feminine gods destroy. They do it with flair and beauty. Now, watch how the masculine god do it. When a tornado coming from a ruler god, the ruler god's job is to not let stuff get so out of control, good or bad, don't matter, that the creator gods can't balance it back out. Right? He can let it get a little bit bad, and he can let it get a little bit good, but he can't let it get too good, and he can't let it get too bad. But he can't let it balance. And this is why your scales of justice in every court in this country is off balance. And this is why your lady justice in every court in this country has on the blindfold. And this is why your lady of justice in every court has her sword of truth hidden behind her back. It's the concealed truth. It's all there. It's right in front of our face. And so the ruler God, using this divide and conquer, you see it first in the story of the Tower of Babel. They had to give you a frame of reference to understand the method. The divide and conquer is one of Enlil's favorite strategies of conquest, because it worked so well. It worked so well. Even white people, the French be falling out with the Italians, the Serbs with the Croats. It the same way that the Hutus and the Tutsis and the Wolof and the whoever, it's the same thing. It's divide and conquer, the same strategy from the same person. Enlil's strategy, I'm telling y'all who behind it. Enlil laid down the strategy. Enki bred the wrong people. And Nu got caught trying to come down here and settle the conflict between the Egyptian gods that was keeping the earth balanced and just, and these Babylonian gods who was bringing in the discord. Genetically, you see it as a reptilian Rh negative and a mammalian Rh positive, right? And then you see your ABO grouping, right? Your ABO grouping of bloods, your A blood group, your B blood group, your O blood group, your AB, your BO, your AO. So they all crisscross. This is the genetics. This is all based on genetics. Now, when you look at it, now it's starting to make sense, because some women, you can tell if they're reptilian because they cannot give what you call a vaginal birth, because she's got something called closed hips. That's a reptilian trait, right? When the reptilian was crossed with the mammal, the ones who kept the strongest reptilian trait, their hips fused early, like at puberty. Whereas those girls that had the mammalian trait, their hips expanded. So then you see that curve, right? But in the reptile, that straight up and down, no hips, because her hips is closed. And so you'll hear a legend in the black community, when they see a girl with wide hips, they say them are baby bearing hips, right? But when you see a chick that had narrow hips, you're like, ooh, she gonna catch it when she have a baby. And this is what they're talking about, so you can understand what's taking place in this genetic cleanup. So the women that can't give birth vaginally are predisposed to certain traits of selfishness, and they are not really receptive of parenting mammals. They're only receptive to parenting to a reptile. Now, if they have to choose between they both of them can be their child. They can have a reptile child and a mammal child. How do you know which one she is? If she has a mammal child, she's gonna say she love him. She's gonna talk about how much he means to her and all of that shit. But he will never have the same value to her as the reptile. You got to keep this in mind. Now, when the female produced the mammal child, she's going to do everything she can to use him for everything she can. But she will not do that same to the reptile child. The reptile child will be exalted in her mind, and it'll be so obvious to the onlooker, but it'll never occur to her. It'll never cross her mind, and she will never see it. Everybody else will see it. Everybody. And they'll talk about it behind her back. But they will never tell her, you favor that child over that one. Why does this child know how to read at 3? This one's 5, and he don't even know his alphabet. She don't have an answer. But she's going to tell you she loves him the same. She don't. Because this is slave driver mentality is driven from the reptilian trait. What we call a slave driver mentality is driven by a reptilian trait. So they go, when they see a mammal, right? When they see the mammal gene, they want to control it because they fear it. They have to control it. And they want to use it as a shield to always try to protect them from the rest of the mammals. Because the reptilians' reign is over, they start to panic in a subconscious capacity. And so now when you only got to go back 150, go back to the beginning of the camera and look at the pictures of the nude humans across all races up till now. You will actually see the last mile of the way. You'll see it. Now, we go back to the slave trade and what they call Emancipation Proclamation. What y'all don't know about that is Emancipation Proclamation didn't free anything or anyone. It does not even mean that. To proclaim something means to say it out loud. To emancipate something is meaning that even though you are incompetent, I'm going to let you walk around like you are. If it was really slavery and they was really freeing slaves, there would have never been a proclamation or a declaration. It would have been either by act of Congress, it would have been congressional order, it would have been Supreme Court rule. It would have been executive order. These are the standards of law in this country. That any and all persons, which is a legal term, which it should say any and all humans, held in bondage, are hereby liberated from any form of bondage or oppression. That would be what you would call freeing a slave. That's what freeing a slave would be. But what you don't know is that the term slave means Slav, indicating those people of the Yugoslavia. Those they call Slavic Rovenia, that area. And those people were what Adolf Hitler called the Aryan race. Now, he told them that he was trying to kill off the Jews, and he told them that he was trying to breed the Aryan race. Let me tell y'all what he was doing. What we call Aryans that Hitler was talking about, the Slavs, the people of the Yugoslavia, Swedes, these people came here to assist the cleanup. They came here by order of something called Ashtar Command. Then you had another group that had both dark-skinned and light-skinned travelers, and they called the Procyones from the place of Procyon. And they came in to assist with the cleanup. So when you see all of the people all of the demons that Solomon is commissioning to build his temple, the temple of man, it's the genetic cleanup. You will find that they all have a different role, a different job, a different part of the cleanup. They're going to tell you what genetic defect is there. That's that demon, what they call a demon, one of the demons, the spirits that Solomon is controlling, is the out of order signature of the DNA. And so this codon has to have a ruler. So then they ask him, what angel restricts you? The angel that he speak of is, it's not really a being outside of itself. He's talking about what ray of light would heal this defect. So that the angel has to tell him, or the demon has to tell him what angel or what order. You gotta keep the mind, order is very necessary. Order. So what order of angel are you under? The order or the restriction or the rule come from this angel. It tell you right there in the judgments of Solomon why he's commissioning them to build the temple. All right, now, this genetic cleanup and this genetic mess, you can see when you look at the annals of the American so-called slaves, you'll see that they were, the slave master was raping the women, making babies by them, raping the babies, making more babies by them. Now, this is the most vile thing. If you would have went to Africa at that time and tried to get Africans to do that, they would have never did it. The moral code and the moral standard was to how the Africans wouldn't have did that. Now, these Europeans that done it, they knew the ones that was here that was overseeing what you call a plantation, which was actually a POW camp, because the war fell into Africa and spilled out of Europe. It wasn't ever supposed to spill out of Europe because the Via kings or the substitute kings, the vice lords, the Via lords, the ones that came over here as Vikings, who were actually Templars, who came over here with the Grail or the blood of the Holy Grail. When they came over here, this part of the world was supposed to be off limits. And this is when the world is flat and you're going to sail off the end of the earth came from. There was the story told to keep the European from ever crossing the water, because this over here was for the last mile of the way, the greatest part of the cleanup. But remember, we're talking about a people that's clairvoyant. So for surety, your children will be afflicted in a foreign land for 400 years. So they had to be clairvoyant to see that. They seen the future. And so the ruler gods that came over here, and Enlil came first. And he was trying to catch Scotta. Now, the Scots know who I'm talking about. When you get to the American South and you read about Maman Brigitte is, they call her Mother Bridget. In the voodoo culture, nobody knows where this white woman come from and what she doing there. All they know is she Irish. They don't know nothing else about her. And she's married to Beryl Croy. Well, this is your remembrance of a Loa, or a ancestral force or spirit. It's called the Loa in Africa. This Loa that they call Maman Brigitte is the redhead princess who would give birth to the son, who would be the patron saint of the mixed seed, the orphan of all nature. Now, in Greece, he was called Orpheus. And all this stuff is easy to look up and say none of this stuff that I'm saying difficult to find. And as I'm laying it out, you see. So he was called Orpheus. And he was to look over the children. Now notice, Orpheus, when you put an N on it, Morpheus, meaning one who transforms, a shapeshifter. Keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to leave that alone because I got to get back to the Catholic Church. The Pope sitting in the place of the Madonna. We sitting here acting like he not. He's in drag. Now, I got to point that out. In Egypt, men wore loincloths for a purpose, a ritualistic purpose. And it was a reminder of the role of the creator women gods. And so they wore it and they call it an apron, but it's a loincloth. And it was a reminder of what took place. All right. So this is all about the future generations, which is now, being able to look back into the history books and say, this is what happened. Everybody not going to be able to do it because of the way that it's broke up, spread out, misinformation, disinformation. So anybody that aspired to do it have to go through a process of what they call raised and passed. This is why your Bible is broke up into books, chapters, and verses, because this is not a book for public dissemination. Anytime you see a book that's broke up into books, chapters, and verses in one text, it's not for everybody. It's what you call an initiation rite. Any society you go in, they're going to have initiation rites and ranks of initiation. So your Bible was that. Now you don't have to go back very far just to right before Martin Luther became the Protestant. And you'll realize that everybody was not allowed to have a Bible, only the priests. Only the priest was allowed to have a Bible. Martin Luther rebelled partially because everybody couldn't have a Bible. Now, in the early 1900s, you get a story written by Khalil Gibran called John the Madman, where John the Madman was just happened to be a little quiet farmer who had his own Bible. And he was using that to express how the church oppressed people and kept them out of having their own access to the divine. But anyway, so when Constantine put the Pope in power, now notice, they use a verse out of the New Testament as the commission of the Pope. And it said to Peter, now this is supposed to be Christ talking, on this rock I build my house. Now the Catholic Church say that's Peter being told, because rock and Peter is supposed to be the same word. But Peter is the Greek word for father, which is Peter is pater, which is father, which is why they called our Catholic priest father after Peter. Now what did Peter do? What did Peter do? Peter denied the Christ 3 times before the rooster crowed. What does that mean? Judaism, the Father denied her. Christianity, the Father denied her. Islam, the Father denied her. This is the dawning of the new day where the rooster crowed. And the Father has denied her through all of the 3 monotheistic doctrines. Though she has been present the whole time, he has written her out of the Old Testament, and he turned her into a ghost in the New Testament, and he has totally subjugated her and completely veiled her in the Quran. 3 times before the rooster crow. The truth gonna come out, and we gonna know that the queen of heaven and earth is only one. So I don't care which one of you roosters want to crow. I'm gonna set the record straight. So the punishment came in the holy drama, which is the war horse and set. It is a court case. It's an adjudication. That's what it is. It is a resolution of a transgression. Now notice you see in the story, there's Osiris, Isis, and Horus, the father, the mother, and the son. Now, in Sumeria, in Babylon, you had Anu, Enki, and Enlil. So you have two different families, right? Now, because of smear campaign, a lot of people believe